Good to go. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome and a happy new year to everyone in attendance. I declare this meeting open at 1:02 p.m. I acknowledge we're hosting this meeting on the traditional land of the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation. We acknowledge the Aboriginal people as the traditional custodians of Western Australia, pay respect to elders past and present, and the ongoing connection between people, land, waters, and community. This meeting will be run in accordance with the DAP Standing Orders 2024 under the DAP Regulations 2011. The meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the DAP website in accordance with Regulation 42A of the DAP Regulations. Panel members may refer to technical devices throughout the meeting to assist them in considering the information for them. I'd like to introduce the members that are with us today. My name is Dale Page. I'm the presiding member today. With me in the room, I have Francesca Lefante, Deputy Presiding Member, Luigi D'Alessandro, Specialist Member. I have Councillor Glenn Cridlin from the City of South Perth. And online we have Councillor Phil Marks from the City of Belmont, and we will be joined shortly by Mayor Robert Rossi from the City of Belmont. Apologies have been received from Councillor Bronwyn Wharf, who is our local government DAP member for the City of South Perth. Members on a leave of absence, we have nil. Item 4, noting of minutes. The minutes of all previous meetings are available on the DAP website if anyone is interested in accessing those minutes. Moving then to Part B of the agenda, which deals with the items relating to the City of South Perth. Item 1, declaration of due consideration. Could I please confirm by a show of hands that all panel members have duly considered all the documentation contained within Part B of the agenda and the Part B related information that was uploaded to the DAP website by a show of hands, please. Thank you. Item 2, disclosures of interest. Do any members wish to make any declarations of interest in relation to this item? Councillor Cridland, could I just check with you whether this application has been before you at a council briefing or meeting?
That question passed my mind as well, and I went back through the last 18 months of council agendas and I couldn't see it on there and I couldn't recall it. I can say vaguely, I can recall someone spoke to me about some townhouses in the Como area in the last 15 months, but I can't recall this one.
That's all good. Thank you very much. Moving on then to item 3 on the agenda, which deals with the Form 1 DAP applications. Item 3.1 before us today relates to lot 173 Lockhart Street, Como, 6 group dwellings, DAP number 24027777. We have one presenter on this item today, Malcolm Mackay, who is speaking in support of the recommendation in the report. Would you like to come forward, Malcolm? Malcolm, I remind you that in accordance with clause 482 of the DAP standing orders, presentations are limited to 3 minutes. I know that you said you'll speak very briefly and take questions. We've written all the written documentation, so you're encouraged just to focus on the bits you want to raise today. So over to you.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon and happy new year, everyone. I'm assuming that you'd read my presentation, if that's the case, which provides a bit of background and let's explain my involvement in the process too. If you've read all of that, then I don't see the need to read through it all again. I'll just say I'm happy to take questions.
Excellent, thank you. Panel members, do we have any questions of the presenter?
No, not today.
Not today. You got off lightly. Well done.
Shortest one ever.
Thank you, Malcolm. Moving on then, from the City of South Perth today online, we have Scott Van Ireland, and I think he is accompanied by Harry Rosenthal and Courtney Wynne. Do any panel members have questions of the local government officers? I have a few, but I might start with you, Councillor. Do you have any questions of the officers?
No.
No questions at this juncture.
Could I just check then? I have a few, if that's okay. Condition 14 refers to prior to submission of a building permit, the commencement of development, whichever is earlier, what development that may commence ahead of the building permit is anticipated by this condition? Are we talking demolition or site works?
Thank you, member. So yes, that commonly would relate to any form of earthworks or demolition associated with the development.
Okay, great. Another question I have. So condition 14.6 and 14.7 appear to be duplication. Would you be happy for us to correct that administratively?
Yes, thank you, and apologies for the error.
No problem. Condition 18, which refers to landscaping, does that include reticulation?
Yes, so reticulation would be required, especially for the common property access portion.
Okay. Then on to advice note 5 is a little confusing to me. It refers to a separate approval process for the works on the verge, but then it reads like a condition of this development approval. Could you comment on that, please?
Yes, thank you. So there's a bit of a non-standard element of verge works associated with this application. To facilitate the application itself, there are proposals to remove an embayed parking bay towards the east of the site, and a significant landscaping and pedestrian path being accompanied with this development. So it's just to make the applicant aware that a separate approval process is required for that.
Then again, advice notes 5 and 7 appear to be duplicates. Would you be happy for us to delete advice note 7 and renumber the rest accordingly?
Yes, that's fine.
Thank you. We'll do that. Just a couple more. Advice note 9 reads like a condition, and that is the advice note that refers to the removal of the street tree and so on. Is that, it reads like a condition, should it be a condition, or is it a standard advice note?
So the city applies these as advice notes because the DA wouldn't apply to works outside of the private property. So this is an advice for the applicant, so they're aware that a future application is required in the future.
Okay. And last, and this is just more for my interest, on page 10, the report outlines that group dwellings are preferred use in the precinct, but that all land uses are considered discretionary in the area covered by the activity centre plan. So could you just talk to me quickly about the relationship between preferred uses and discretionary? Because in my mind, if it's a preferred use, it should be.
Yeah, certainly. So the property is zone centre under the City of South Perth Local Planning Scheme number 7. That defers the land use permissibility effectively to a guidance document, which is the Canning Bridge Activity Centre Plan. So there's no actual land use permissibility table associated with Canning Bridge Activity Centre Plan, or broadly speaking within an activity centre. All land uses within the activity centre themselves are discretionary, and there would be no exemption for, say, a change of use, even if you were going from a permitted use to a permitted use. Or, for example, if someone ordinarily wanted to build a single house, it would still require development approval because those exemptions don't apply.
Thank you. Okay, any other follow-up questions?
I have none.
No? All right. We might move to the report then, and I would like to seek a mover and a seconder for a recommendation in the responsible authority report. Would anyone like to move the recommendation? Francesca, would anyone like to second? Councillor Criddle. All right, would you like to talk as mover?
Yes, I'm moving the recommendation as written in the beginning of the agenda. I am supportive of the proposal. The proposal is consistent with the planning framework, including both the scheme as well as the Canning Bridge Activity Centre plan, and acknowledge the site zoning and the comments that have been provided today in relation to the land use disability. I have given due regard to the submissions and the concerns raised in those submissions, particularly in relation to access parking along the rear of the property, and some concerns regarding property value and structural matters. Overall, the proposal is an excellent development, and I think it's both innovative development on its site, the positive use of the maximising the design in terms of incorporating rear access way to the site and putting ground level bedrooms to facilitate an upper level lounge room, which has direct access to a fairly large outdoor area. I think it's a positive design given the site, and it's also positive that all of those properties face all of the streets and have strong interaction with the streetscape. As I've already indicated, both the design, form and scale is appropriate from my perspective, responding to the site context, and provides transitional building form within and has been set in the RAR in relation to the precincts H4 and H8. I note there's been some design changes as a result of the consideration through the DRP, and I'm comfortable that the design is appropriate in its context. Overall, I think it's an excellent design, and it provides sufficient landscaping, good street interaction, and I've already indicated a positive aspect for outdoor living areas on the upper level. I'm comfortable with the design and the appropriateness of design incorporating the rear driveway and the parking areas with access, and I note that the servicing is provided by the street. Overall, I'm supportive of the proposal for the reasons I have cited.
Thank you very much. Councillor Cridland, would you as seconder like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, presiding member. I don't think I can say nearly as much or speak as quickly as that.
Oh, sorry.
But there are a couple of items that I wish to add. First of all, I have noted the comments of the one submitter and also Mr. Mackay today, who was very short and to the point. In respect of some of those items that were raised, such as potential to decrease property values, I don't think that's a correct comment, nor do I think it's a valid thing for me to take into account. In respect of the comment that townhouses may not deliver the density anticipated by Canning Bridge Activity Centre Plan, I think that this particular type of design is in fact very good for the area. I don't think, I know that when I was on council and the activity centre plan was developed, that we weren't anticipating that they would all be apartment blocks which were rectangular IKEA style ones which are situated on quarter-acre lots. And I think this brings a variety of residential typology into the area, which will make it more interesting than some of the apartment blocks that have gone up so far. It also means that this site can be developed now so that the activity centre plan can reach its what I think was anticipated, that there would be an increase in density, because at the moment we have a number of vacant lots which have been cleared for development and no developments happen. So I think this is very positive. I also like the design insofar as it maximises the views out to the spectacular river. I note the comments about the outdoor living areas. It will be quite noisy, but perhaps if the noise attenuation condition is complied with, at least inside behind the glass, it'll be a beautiful place to be. So I thank the applicant for coming up with a design which I think will be fitting for this part of the activity centre plan, and which will help move this area forward. So I ask the panel to support this particular application.
Thank you, Councillor Cridland. Would any other member like to speak?
Yes, I'd like to speak in support of the proposals, as again I don't want to repeat, I'm consistent with the planning framework. The design is appropriate for the location on the end of the activity centre and does provide that diversity, and it's a good design outcome for the area, so I'm supporting it.
Thank you very much. Very briefly, I will also be supporting the proposal for preferred use in the precinct, and it meets most of the provisions of the planning framework applicable to the site, where discretion is required to be applied for certain elements. The city's report has provided solid justification for these. The applicant has responded to some of the issues raised by the city's design review panel, and conditions of approval have been recommended to address others. And again, noting the objection that was received, but I do feel that the issues raised in the submission have been appropriately responded to in the report and via conditions of approval. So happy to support. Unless there's anything else, then would the mover like to close?
There's nothing further I want to say. Further comment.
Thank you. There's a recommendation in the report noting those administrative changes that we talked about earlier will be made. Let's put the recommendation to a vote by show of hands. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to item 4, Form 2 DAP applications. There are nil to be considered at this meeting. Item 5, Section 31, SAT reconsiderations, nil for this meeting. With that, that will part B of this agenda, and I thank Councillor Cridlin from the City of South Perth and Malcolm Mackay for their attendance and participation. All right, moving then on to part B of the City of Belmont, and welcome to Mayor Rossi, who has joined us. I'd like to welcome then both Councillor Mayor Rossi and Phil Marks, our local government DAP members from the City of Belmont, to the panel. Could I please see by a show of hands that all panel members have duly considered all the documentation contained within Part C of the agenda and the Part C related information that was uploaded to the DAP website? Thank you. Moving to item 2 under Part C, disclosures of interest. Do any members wish to make any declarations of interest in relation to this item? Local government members, could I confirm whether or not this application has been before you at a council briefing or meeting? No. Oh, excellent. Thank you very much. Moving then on to our Form 1 DAP applications for this part of the agenda, we have one, item 3.1, lot 800 Homelier Court, Riverdale, 171 multiple dwellings, DAP number 2402744. We have one presenter on this item today, Peter Simpson from PTS Town Planning, speaking in support of the recommendation in the report. Peter, I remind you, in accordance with clause 4A2 of the DAP standing orders, that presentation. We've read all the documentation you've provided, so perhaps just stick to the most salient bits.
Thank you. And with me, I have Scott Cameron from Finbar and Chris Tuggy from SS Chang Architects, if you've got any questions of the developer and the architect. I won't go through the presentation provided. Obviously, it's got a recommendation for approval, generally supported. There's only 5 objections in what is a really high density area. I just wanted to deal with the 2 conditions, condition 5 and 26. Condition 5, we're seeking your consideration to potentially enable the upper level to have views from their balcony. So from a historical point of view, the place of worship's existed there for 50 years. During the development of the whole precinct, there were lots of actions by the state government, the local government, Finbar, to actually relocate the place of worship, because noting that it was going to be left sort of isolated by itself. Those discussions didn't come to fruition for whatever reason in terms of the place of worship. So that's really just left them with a sort of a triangle bit of land on the boundary to the freeway. So we acknowledge obviously what the city said in terms of considering the place of worship, and it's, you know, overlooking to the place of worship is not necessarily such an issue. It's more the potential future. And our view is that given the limited ability to actually develop that site, because it is constrained, it's largely a leftover land, whether the JDAP would give consideration to requiring the lower levels to be screened. But once you get to sort of past level 4 or 5, you're at a height of 15 metres, and whether there would be the ability to not require screening at those points. Obviously, it's beneficial to not require screening to those people because they get a view and all that sort of thing. That's in relation to condition 5. Condition 26 is more a point of clarification, and it might not necessarily be a DAP matter. It might actually be a City of Belmont matter because they're responsible for clearing the conditions. But it was really just to put on the table to acknowledge that, yes, we agree with that condition. However, there are small portions of gaps, say between the balcony floor and the bottom of the balustrade, that some of these services might be viewed. And we didn't want to take an overly restricted view of that condition and just acknowledge that that exists on the plans and it's appropriate. So unless there's any questions, that's our end of our presentation.
Thank you very much. Panel members, are there any questions of the applicant and presenters? And I might start off with our local government members. Mayor Rossi and Councillor Marks, do you have any questions? Mayor Rossi, go ahead.
Thank you. So your view would be that you don't want the permanent screening because you believe eventually they may sell? Is that what your intention is? Is that why you don't want it?
No, so we don't want the permanent screening because, so I'll go back one. So obviously screening is not necessarily required to place of worship, but acknowledging that some development could occur in the future on a very constrained site. We're seeking to have the condition so that the screening only applies to the lower levels, so that the upper levels of the building can enjoy the views and the additional light that will come into those balconies.
Thank you.
Any further questions, Mayor Rossi?
No.
Councillor Marks, do you have any questions? No. Do any other panel members have
Not to the
questions?
applicant at this juncture.
Okay, so can I just confirm, Peter, you're not asking for deletion of condition 26. You're just trying to make us aware that you believe the current plans meet the intent of that condition. Is that correct? Okay, thank you. All right, thank you. We will then move on to invite questions of the local government officers. We have Nick Reddy and Brandon Pang with us from the City of Belmont today. And I will move to our local government members first. Councillor Marks and Mayor Rossi, do you have any questions of the officers? Go ahead, Mayor Rossi.
Thank you. Just regarding point 5, what's your viewpoint? Could one of the officers talk to it, please, of what's been recommended from the developer?
Thanks, Mayor Rossi, and through the chair. The city acknowledges that the neighbouring property currently contains the place of public worship, and the shape of the lot is unlikely to support a substantial residential development of a similar size or scale. However, the neighbouring property could be developed, and the proximity of the balconies to the property boundary would cause a privacy concern if not screened. Therefore, the condition and the screening of those would prevent the overlooking in the future if that site were to be developed. So the city recommends maintaining that condition. However, if the DAP does decide to adopt the applicant's suggested condition, that wording would also be appropriate.
Thank you. Any other questions, Mayor Rossi?
No, thank you.
No. Councillor Marks, do you have any questions of the officers? No. Do any other DAP members have questions of the officers?
Yes, I have a question, if I may. Through the chair, could you just clarify for me the condition that we're referring to, and I'm speaking to condition 5 and the requested amendment. The requested amendment seeks to have the northeast facing balconies, the first 4 levels is marked red on the approved plans. And I'm looking at a set of plans that are contained within our agenda. They are referred to as amended plans received 6th December 2024. So just clarifying that I'm the same set of plans that you're referring to. And I note that on those plans, there are balcony screening listed on that set of plans. Those balcony screenings that are listed refer to, as shown on the plan in red, refer to the corner. Clarify.
So I'm looking at the set of plans with the annotation on the corner development where the balcony is sort of in an L shape. Is that?
Yes, that's correct. Yes.
Yeah, so yeah, that would be the balcony that would require the screening, and it would be on all the levels is what the conditions are referring to.
Thank you. So just to clarify, and I appreciate that it's probably fairly clear for most parties, but the request from the applicant for the modification is for the first 4 level balconies. So the corner unit that's under question is essentially that one corner unit on levels 4 to 11.
That's correct.
Treating levels ground through to 3 as the first 4 levels. I'm assuming the applicant, is that correct? You're referring to that, ground to 3, and then the question you've got is from level 4 above on that corner unit.
That's correct.
Thank you. Just wanted to see clarification.
Yeah, question.
Not at this juncture.
Okay, I have a couple if you don't mind. So condition 4 requires payment of a developer contribution before lodgement of the building application. Wouldn't it be more appropriate to require payment before commencement of development or occupation? I'm just wondering, as a developer, to be required to pay a developer contribution before you even have building approval is a little unusual in my mind. Is that a standard condition, or could you explain why you would require that developer contribution before the building application?
Yeah, I believe that would be our standard wording. It would be prior to building permit. So whether Brandon has anything to add.
Yeah, to add to that, essentially it's a condition that applies to the various projects that have occurred in the spring, and it's, whilst not a standard per se, it is a standard in terms of the condition that we apply to all the developments within the springs. However, if that preference is for it to be we don't have it.
Thank you. Does the city have any indication what sort of public art the applicant intends to install?
Not at this point, and this is also, I suppose, the city's position in dealing with projects that require. Understand at early stages of the project that it's unlikely for the applicant to have program public art in place. So we have the condition requiring them to submit a public art concept prior to the building permit so that they can have that put in motion.
Okay. Last couple more, if you don't mind. On page 31, under the section building depth, there's a statement that local planning policy 7 specifies a minimum depth of 18 metre between glass lines. Is that meant to read maximum? Is it a maximum depth that's specified by that policy? I'm assuming the intent of the policy is to keep the depth as small as possible.
Yeah, that's right. That's it.
All right, that's all good. Thank you very much. That is the last question from me. Any other questions from any MIDAP members?
I just had one. Were there any objections from the adjoining neighbour?
I can speak on that one.
Potential or not, but were there any objections about overlooking?
Yeah, so we received 5 objections to the proposal. I don't believe there was any from the the place of public worship. Yeah, we didn't receive any objections from that.
Thank you. That's fine.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. We might move to the report then. Can I seek a mover and a seconder for the recommendation in the responsible authority report? Would anyone like to move the recommendation? Thank you, Francesca. Anyone like to second the recommendation in the report? I will. Moved Francesca, seconded myself. Would you like to talk?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the extensive agenda item. Thank you to officers. It has covered off all of the matters from my perspective, and I note that there's an unusual series of complex planning framework that sits around it, including the special control area provisions. The land use is a discretionary use and is appropriate in the context of the site and consistent from my perspective with the surrounding form of development. I also note that the RAR provided a very good outline for the surrounding sites that showed the context of the sites, particularly in relation to height and form. Overall, the development is a good proposal in the context of the planning framework in which it sits. I've given due regard to the submissions and concerns raised, particularly in relation to views and height and overshadowing, and as already indicated, I'm satisfied that based on the material that we have been provided today, it is appropriate in its planning framework and context. I also note that the information provided in the RAR has identified and discussed in detail the issue around views and has outlined how that would play out in the context of the orientation of this site. I'm satisfied that it is consistent with the planning framework and appropriate in its form. Overall, I'm supportive of the design as we have here. In terms of exercise of discretion, and I also note that the proposal seeks for a use of exercise of discretion for the on-site parking arrangement, particularly in relation to the shared servicing and loading area. And I think based on the material we have provided, including a requirement for a parking management plan and with details in terms of the management arrangements, it's appropriate in this context. The variations that are being sought have been identified and articulated through the RAR, those in relation to both plot ratio and a variety of other elements, and I'm satisfied that this is suitable and compliant with the proposal. I would at this juncture with the, should I get a seconder, seek an amendment. My amendment, it's amendment 1, and I seek to modify condition 5 as written, as requested by the applicant. The language that has been included by the applicant is an additional words of for the first 4 levels, which is ground through to level 3. Just want to clarify that is what I'm referring to, not level 4 as such. It is ground to level 3. From my perspective,
Before you speak to the amendment, I'm happy to second that amendment. I'm happy for you to talk to the amendment.
Yeah. I am comfortable that in this particular context, the request for a modification to the screening of the levels from level 4 above, or from story 4 above, is appropriate, particularly in the context of this site, that the adjoining property is a non-residential activity. It's a place of worship. It adjoins the road, a significant freeway, and that any development in future will require, on the event that this is built prior to any other development, will need to take into consideration development of this form. I also note that has been identified in this site that many of those developments seek to capitalise on the views that take it to Optus Stadium, as well as to the other sites in the local area, including the Swan River. I'm comfortable that those parties and the design of the building would encourage and support views out to the broader area, that rather than a downward view overlooking the properties. And in that instance, I'm supportive of an amendment for those first ground for the balconies above the first 4 levels.
Thank you. As seconder to the amendment, I'll speak briefly on the amendment only. It does seem a shame I'll be supporting that amendment. It does seem a shame to restrict views from the balconies which would improve the livability of these units when the perceived overlooking really isn't impacting anybody on the adjoining lot. I acknowledge the lot may be developed in future, but the design of that development, if that were even to occur, could then take that into account and mitigate any unreasonable loss of a privacy that may occur. Does any member wish to speak to the amendment before we vote on that amendment? Councillor Marx, you want to talk to the amendment? Can't hear you. We can't hear you, Councillor Marx. Is it at our end?
That would be better. The site they're talking about is the old site, an Arab site used for religious purposes. This fight has been going on for something like 25, 30 years about the movement of this particular site, and it has now got to the stage where they're developing next to it, and I can see no reason why we would not do exactly as required by the people who have been trying to get the religious site moved and have had stonewalled, or have had this site has been stonewalling against them for many, many years. And I think that I can do nothing but vote for it as quick as possible.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak to the amendment? Mayor Rossi?
Yes, to the amendment, I'm concerned that when that site is developed, it could be 10 years, 15, 20 years, the only way to get value from that site would be going up. And it may be, well, what we're seeing developed in America, it could be done there, and then we'll have all these apartments looking into another set of apartments. So I have the original point set by the officers. So I don't support this.
Thank you, Mayor Rossi. Does anyone else wish to speak to the amendment?
Yes, I'd like to speak to the amendment. I'll be supporting the amendment on the basis that it does provide greater livability and currently overlooking a non-residential site. So on that basis, I'll be voting for.
Thank you. So before we vote on this amendment, I'd like to just clarify. The amendment seeks to change the wording of condition 5 to include the wording for the first floor 4 levels after the wording northeast facing balconies. If we're clear on that, can I see all those in favour of the amendment? Against? Thank you. The amendment is carried. That forms part of the primary motion now, and so I'll talk to the primary motion. I guess I'll be supporting the recommendation for approval. Before I talk to that, though, I am keen to move a second amendment. And that second amendment relates to condition 4, which states currently, prior to lodging an application for a building permit, the applicant owner shall arrange payment to the City of Belmont of $276,592.27 in accordance with Schedule 11 of Local Planning Scheme number 15 and the associated contribution plan. I'm seeking to amend that condition that it says prior to commencement of development, instead of the wording lodging an application for a building permit. Do I have a seconder for that amendment? Seconded, Francesca. I'll speak very briefly to the amendment. I just feel that to require a developer to pay a developer contribution before they even have submitted a building permit is probably not unreasonable, but I think it is more reasonable that once they have their building permit and they know that everything's a go, that they need to pay that before commencement of development. Just makes more sense to me. So that's why I'm moving this amendment. Francesca, as seconder to the amendment, do you wish to speak?
I would echo the comments that you've said. There's a mechanism there to require the payment of the required funds, and it's a timing matter that is appropriate.
Does anyone else wish to speak for or against this amendment?
Just happy to support the amendment.
Thank you. All those in favour of the amendment to reword condition 4? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Moving back then to the primary motion, supporting the recommendation for approval as seconder. The applicant has responded to some of the issues raised by the city's design review panel, and conditions of approval have been recommended to address others. The proposal largely meets the provisions of the local planning framework, and where there are areas of discretion sought, where there almost always are for big developments like this, I feel these have been appropriately justified in the city's report. Although the plot ratio is higher than stipulated in Local Planning Policy 7, many other developments in the area have been approved with more plot ratio, and the elements of the building that project beyond the height envelope are minor and don't cause any issues, in my view, for neighbours or the amenity of the area. In fact, it appears the building will be one of the lower buildings in the immediate vicinity. There were a small handful of objections received, but some of the issues raised, in my view, like overshadowing and loss of use, have not been substantiated. The concerns about traffic impacts are noted, but this area is identified for higher density living, and the transport impact statement provided demonstrates that the additional traffic that will be generated by this development can comfortably be accommodated within the road network. All in all, I feel it's a good development for this area, so we'll be supporting. Do I have any other member that would like to speak for or against the primary motion as amended? No?
I'd like to speak for the amendment. I'll be supporting the recommendation with the amendments on the basis that it's an appropriate use and consistent with the area. Provides a good design outcome.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wish to speak? No. Would the mover like to close?
I have nothing further to say.
All right, then let's put the primary motion to vote by a show of hands, noting that that is subject to the amendment of condition 4 and condition 5. All those in favour of the primary motion as amended? That is carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 4, Form 2 DAP applications. There are none for this meeting. Item 5, Section 31 SAT reconsiderations. There are none for this meeting. Part D, other business. SAT applications and Supreme Court appeals. SAT applications for the DAP are listed on the website. None relate to the City of Belmont. There is one that relates to the City of South Perth, an application for a childcare premises at 44 Ark Street, Como. With that, I close the meeting at 1:44 p.m. and thank everyone for your attendance, and we will see you next time.